Sup, sports fans? Thanks for coming in and listening. I truly appreciate it. I wanted to offer my thoughts up on the latest happenings revolving my hometown team, the Cleveland Browns. They've made national waves with the blockbuster trade that brought in Odell Beckham Jr. And that move, among others, has pretty much the vast majority of attention being given to the Browns now being considered a Super Bowl contender when it has actually been less than 2 calendar years from the Browns actually going through an entire football season without winning a game, something that had only been done once before in a 16-game season. Now, with the addition of Odell Beckham Jr., the excitement is very understandably through the roof in Cleveland. National hosts of talk shows on TV and radio are weighing in, offering similar enthusiasm and excitement over the prospects for what this means for the Browns going forward. They are now actually, in some corners, the trendy pick to actually make it to the Super Bowl, which is what brings me to wanting to share my thoughts on it. My opinion, as the title suggests, I don't think there's any way possible that the Browns are going to go to the Super Bowl this upcoming season. Are they on their way? Sure. You understand when progress is being made, but it's a little bit too much too soon to think that they're going to win. And I have the following reasons as to why they aren't going to even make it to the Super Bowl. They won't. They may make it to the AFC Championship game if things break their way. Honestly, I would have doubts as to that happening. The reasons that I get into will highlight why I have those doubts, but I think it's very possible they can make it to the AFC Championship game. But I don't. They won't win that game. They won't make it to the Super Bowl, even if they get that far. The first reason I did already touch upon in a little bit, they aren't exactly going in a position to go from worst to first. They're close. They did not finish in last place in the division last year. The Cincinnati Bengals did finish last. The Browns were in third place. Actually, the Browns were not so far removed from making the playoffs last year. They went down to the wire, but truth be told, most teams in the NFL go down to the wire making the playoffs in like the last week or two or three is when most of those teams will be eliminated. So that's great compared to what Cleveland fans are used to late in the season. But again, this was a situation where you're looking at a team that almost is being considered to go from worst in the league to the best in the league in a matter of a year and a half, 2 years. To give you perspective on that, it's only been done very few times. Most recently, the team that went from worst to first was the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished in last place in their division the year before they won the Super Bowl behind Nick Foles subbing in for Carson Wentz. What is not really mentioned is that even though they finished last, they went 7-9. 7-9 was just not good enough to finish any place other than last place in what was a tough NFC East division. So the Browns were 7-8-1, Eagles were 7-9, so that's similar. After the Rams, I looked it up. It's not very many instances where teams, again, even make it to the Super Bowl. You'll have teams that finish in last place that will make it to the playoffs. Those teams usually fall off in the, if not the wild card, they'll fall off in the first round, like the divisional rounds is what they call it. Divisional rounds of the playoffs, which is the second weekend of the of NFL playoffs. For those who may not understand exactly how far into the playoff season the divisional round takes place, that in itself is statistically speaking why it's not reasonable, in my opinion, to consider the Browns going to the Super Bowl. And again, keep in mind, this is my hometown. I grew up here. I'm not trying to spread negativity or hatred just because I don't like the Browns. I would like nothing more than to see my hometown team of all sports. I've seen it recently with basketball, LeBron James, And you guys who've listened to my other videos, you know my thoughts on LeBron James. So I've seen Cleveland finally win a championship for the first time in my lifetime. The football, Cleveland is a football city. Always has been, most likely always will be. To see the Browns go to the Super Bowl, I was around to see the Browns make it to the AFC Championship game with Bernie Kosar, and it just took over the entire city. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go to school. You couldn't turn on the radio. Browns songs, left and right rap songs, every kind of rock songs by the Browns. It is a Browns town, and it would be nothing but awesome to have that take place with the new excitement surrounding Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., Myles Garrett, and a list of other players as well. I did want to stop briefly to make sure I do give proper thanks to the YouTube channel Fabian Rausch for supplying the video that you're looking at here. Just video clips of the players I just mentioned, just to give you like a sense of that Cleveland Browns feel to it. And I just want to make sure I did thank Fabian Rausch for usage of the video footage you're looking at here. Getting back to the reasons why the Browns won't make the playoffs, despite how much excitement it causes when you have a team that's contending for the playoffs and or the Super Bowl. Other than the fact that you're looking at a worst to first, which basically says it's not very often that you're going to have a team turn around that quickly, that dramatically. It's not done very often at all. After the Philadelphia Eagles, like most of the teams that did, again, they lost in the first round of the wild card, or the very next weekend during the divisional round, they lost out. Not many teams even made it to the championship game of the conference. Another reason why the Browns are not going to be making it to the Super Bowl, even if you as presently constituted, their entire roster does not have one player on it that has been to the Super Bowl. Not one. 53-man roster, you have players on the practice squad, things like that. Not one. Now, the latest update, they did have someone that finished this past season that had been to the Super Bowl. That was Jamie Collins, the linebacker. He has since been let go, and I don't know if he signed as of yet. Last time I checked, I don't think he had. He's still waiting, but he's not going to be back with the Browns, so that leaves the locker room with no one. So for all the talent that they have, none of them can say, hey, fellas, I know what it's like. I know what the locker room needs to be like. I know how much hard work needs to go into it. They don't have that. That's incredibly valuable. The Eagles, when they went from worst to the Super Bowl champions in 1 year, they had two players. Running back who played LeGarrette Blount, did it with the New England Patriots. Then they also had Malcolm Jenkins. It escapes me as to which team he was with when they went to the Super Bowl. I think maybe the Falcons, but don't hold me to that. I may be wrong there. But they had two players, an offensive leader and a defensive leader, to help guide the rest of the team through that. Browns have no one in the organization. The coaching staff has not been. I mean, Freddie Kitchens, this will be his next head coaching game, will be his first head coaching game ever. So that the assistants, they may have some experience there, so that can prove helpful. I don't know the background resume of all the assistants on the team, but in terms of players, which is one thing to hear it from a coach, another thing to hear leadership from players, none of those players have that type of leadership to offer as of yet. There are still moves to be made. You never know what kind of trades and or acquisitions can be made to bring in that type of leadership into the locker room. But as of right now, that's a very huge reason why the Browns won't be making it to the Super Bowl. Now, the aspect of the Browns that has people excited, getting into my next reason, you have, of course, what many will argue is the premier wide receiver in the NFL. He did everything he did in New York with the Giants, and his quarterback, Eli Manning, wasn't considered to be a top 5, top 10 quarterback during that time. So he's getting all this kind of production, and he's getting it done with an average performing quarterback who was on the downside of his career. Now he's got an up and coming young quarterback who loves to sling it around, very strong, accurate arm. Again, took the Browns from a record that was very much under 500, and then when he was inserted as a starter, and they changed head coaches mid-season, Browns took off. The offense took off. So again, so that's all part of the excitement. And now added to that, you now bring in a top flight number one wide receiver who could be the best wide receiver in the league. So there's plenty of optimism there. You pair him off with Jarvis Landry, his teammate in college at LSU. They also have the same wide receivers coach that they both learned under at LSU. The Browns wide receiver coached them at LSU. So you have all that familiarity to help ease that transition into working together and from the Browns fans' perspective, succeeding in NFL games. You have Nick Chubb, who came off of a season where he was just maybe 3 or 4 yards short of getting 1,000 yards in his rookie season, and he wasn't the starter from day one. They made a trade to get rid of the starter and insert Nick Chubb, and he takes off and almost gets 1,000 yards. Now he's back. You have the optimism with having picked up Kareem Hunt. He's been suspended for the first 8 games of the season for his violence towards women, just putting it out there bluntly, as he was on film having committed violence towards women, and the NFL suspended him for the first 8 games. But when he's coming back, there'll be those who say that he's the best running back on the roster. But even still, you now have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt to go with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. You have a promising rookie with Antonio Callaway, who has speed to burn from Florida, just coming off of his rookie season, and his learning curve is still trending up. And so you have a lot of excitement there with just the offensive personnel at the Browns' disposal. The problem with that, as I see it, this is still Cleveland. I don't mean that to be negative about Cleveland having that image of not being a winning football town. I'm speaking of this is still Cleveland from the standpoint of Cleveland winters are no joke. I grew up in them. And when you get to late November, December, even January, those winters are unforgiving. They're not as close to the Lake Erie as they used to be where the stadium is, but they're still right there. And that wind comes in, that snow that can fall, the freezing temperatures, wind chill, that does not lend itself to an aerial attack that you're going to have with having Odell Beckham Jr. What you need to do then, for the most part, regardless of how much football may be changing through innovations to make it more of a passing league, sooner or later the weather gets in the way and you need to be able to just pound that ball on the ground. And that's Cleveland Browns football throughout tradition. Jim Brown, Marion Motley, Leroy Kelly, Mike Pruitt, Greg Pruitt, Ernest Biner, Kevin Mack, and it goes on and on. That's just how the Browns get down, so to speak. They pound the ball on the ground. That's what they're known for. And in the wintertime, in those winter months, that's when it becomes crucial in the playoff games. Running the ball, as good as Kareem Hunt, as good as Nick Chubb is, Nick Chubb, you can argue, may be a ground and pound type running back. I've yet to see that from Kareem Hunt. But it'll be interesting. Does that offensive line have what it takes to move that defensive line, to open up those holes and to let them pound the ball when that offensive air attack is going to be limited by the winter weather? If the Browns are going to be as good as people say they are, some of these playoff games will be home games. So that's going to be something else to learn. Now, what goes unsaid until now is that with the Browns not having anybody on that roster who's been through the locker room situation, the game situations, the season of experience where you made it to the Super Bowl, as I like to put it, no one on that Browns roster, as it is currently put together, even has an idea what questions are out there in terms of what does it take. What really does it take? Everything that it takes to become a Super Bowl champion. No one in the locker room even knows what questions have to be answered, let alone how to answer those questions, what the answer actually is in the first place, and then how to answer it. That speaks to that lack of experience when you get to games that matter. When's the last time the Browns played a game that mattered, where you can say, yeah, you're on the brink of the playoffs, this game matters, but you're not really expected to do anything. You just finished 0-16. No one's treating you seriously. That's all changed now. You now have a target on your back, and you now have to play and win, and compete and win from that perspective. You have those playoff atmosphere games where you're going to be playing against teams that have been to the playoffs, even teams that may have made it to the Super Bowl, or having many players on those other teams that have been to the Super Bowl. So even if you have the home field advantage, you have a team coming into your home stadium knowing what it takes to win, and you're playing not knowing. So that home field advantage that's usually so great has a way of not working out. That's why those teams that go from worst to first don't usually make it, that I went over earlier in this video about the teams. I'm not counting the Eagles. You have the roadblocks that just come up because you don't know what you don't know, and you have to figure it out in the highest level of football against the best teams the league has to offer in a playoff setting. And that team, that combined with not having anybody who's been through those wars, who's been through the battles that it takes, that doesn't bode well for any team being able to figure it out without having first learned what you need to know and taking that back and putting that into your experience. And come back when teams come back saying this is an experienced team. They've been through those wars. They've had those questions that they didn't know existed, that they had to figure out the answers to. They have that experience. The Browns don't. This is why that, in spite of how exciting it is to have a Browns team that is the center of attention right now. And they are. The Browns are, people are shocked just because it's the Browns you're being talked about as Super Bowl contenders. And I'm happy to be able to say that it's good to see the Browns getting that kind of attention. Feel a little bit, Browns fans will feel a little bit better about themselves going into the next season than they have in over 10 years. And that's not an exaggeration. So hopefully it'll be exciting for me and everyone else to see how it all plays out. But those were my thoughts. Again, I want to thank the YouTube channel Fabian Rausch for use of the video footage. Definitely share your thoughts below about what kind of chances you think the Browns have, whether or not the points I brought up have any merit to it. If you know me from having watched my other videos, I'm not one who speaks on emotions. If you think the Browns are going to win just because you want them to win, then that's fine. You can think that. It's America, like I said, in other videos. But I would like to have reasons. I pointed out very concrete reasons as to why experience matters. History has shown it matters. It doesn't matter every single time, but it matters more often than not. Give me the reasons why you think it doesn't matter. Give me the reasons why you think the weather's going to make it matter. I got Nick Chubb from Georgia, who's not used to pounding the ball out in high school or college in the winter months, and he's going to have to do it in the pros. Kareem Hunt from Toledo, he's used to it, so that hopefully he's that back. But again, just from his stature, you wouldn't consider him to be that player. You just line up and say pound him on the ground with Kareem Hunt. Maybe he is. We'll have to find out. But yeah, give me your reasons why you feel what you feel. If you disagree with me, down below, please hit the like button and click on the subscribe button. And as always, treat each other with respect and be good to one another.